Hello, everyone. My name is Akal, and I'm a somatic therapist as well as an astrological counselor. If you'd like to find out a little more about work I do, the services I offer, you can check out my website down below the video. Also, down below the video is vaultoftheheavens.com, which is where you can go to get your specific nakshatra placements. And what you want to look at is you want to look at the moon, of course, probably the most important placement, the sun, and the ascendant. Those being the most prominent energies. So what we're going to look at today is we're going to look at all the planetary energies associated with Purva Bhadrapada Nakshatra. This nakshatra is arguably the most intense nakshatra in the entire, I guess, zodiac of nakshatras, all 27 or so. So the energy here, why is it so intense? The best way to look at this as to why all these very intense terms, like some of the terms I saw, volatile, intense, hot, violent, like passionate, all these terms keep getting described here. But I think about where it lies on the zodiac, on the solar zodiac, is that it's right 3/4 of it is in Aquarius and 1/4 is in Pisces. Pisces is not typically associated with intensity. So I'm like, why? And Aquarius is an air sign. So again, why intensity? These folks are often associated with very fiery energy. Now, the reason for this is the gunas. So the gunas are the fundamental energies that underline all existence. You have sattvic energy, which is, I like to look at sattvic energy as representing a bridge from past to future would be one way to look at that bridge. Another way to look at that bridge would be to perceive it as, well, rather as a flow through. So not so much a bridge, so much as a flow through. With sattvic, you don't have resistance. It's much more neutral in nature. Then you have rajasic energy playing here as well. So that is the fire, the heat, the drive. And so that how we can look at these in terms of like the layers that represent this placement is on a deep, deep, deep unconscious level. This energy is simply flowing through these individuals. On a secondary level, once again, what we're getting now is the conscious mind is engaged a little bit more on the secondary level. You could say this is more their internal nature, is that of neutrality. So there's a neutralness, an objectivity, the ability to perceive this or that, and discernment. On the final level, we have rajasic, which is activity expressed outward into the world, projected outward. So the fire that's associated with this placement is Kundalini energy. So these people are the divine expression of this Kundalini fire. I would say that's probably the best way to say it, is they have Kundalini fire and it's just pushing through. So when we think about Kundalini energy, particularly those of us who do a fair amount of meditation, yoga, etc., we'll notice as we begin to wake up, as we become more and more aware of ourselves and our connection to spirit, this energy begins to increase in intensity. So it often will create side effects. So if your Kundalini energy wakes up way too quickly, oftentimes it'll leave you in a position of, sometimes feeling sick, dizzy. Other things that you may experience are, tension. So physical tension, for me, for instance, I have my son in this placement. I experience tremendous physical tension. So for me, meditation and yoga are absolutely essential. And I would probably say anyone who has their moon or their ascendant in this placement, you got to meditate. You got to meditate because we need to become this conduit. So the god associated with this is called Aja Ekapada. I believe I'm pronouncing that right. So Ajacapada is really interesting. Regardless of what it looks like, it's like a two-faced goat god on one leg, whatever it is. I don't remember. But the point that I do remember is that the energy associated with Ajacapada has to do with Ajacapada doesn't really represent a structure. It represents a flow, a conduit. It's the energy that, basically you could say like the sun, let's say. So the sun and all the waves of sun solar plasma that are coming towards Earth essentially flow through Ajacapada. Hard to describe. But again, the association here is that of fire. So how can these individuals become the best possible conduit? And that is through surrender. And surrender is not really easy here because of all this activity. So it becomes really, really interesting is that I'll go ahead and read some of the words that are associated that are not so pleasant sounding with this nakshatra. Sexual perversion, eccentric, rebellious, alienation, desperation, violence, disturbed souls, extreme and volatile, intense and hot, critical, passionate, and the left-hand path or black magic. Now, why the left-hand path and black magic? That's kind of what I was wanting to look at here. The left-hand path, black magic, would have to do is when we are not that we don't have that divine level of surrender, then we end up basically, the ego basically becomes too big and it wants to start to manipulate things. It wants to control things. And so the difference between black magic and white magic would be the intention. The intention is ultimately what guides it. So these folks need to switch to a white magic kind of pathway, meaning surrender to spirit as it's flowing through them so they can recognize what's authentic. Because otherwise, if they are functioning from an egoic place, all those terms like volatility and violence and all this kind of words, they're appropriate. So let's go ahead and look at the planetary energies that are associated here, as well as Aquarius and Pisces and what happens. So the first off is that Purva Bhadrapada is generally ruled by Jupiter. So we're seeing expansive high-mindedness. So it's the movement towards spiritualizing principles. This is more Piscean Jupiter versus a Sagittarius Jupiter. And what I mean by that is Piscean Jupiter is more concerned with that movement towards spirit in general. It's the movement back to source, back to the original spark. Sagittarius Jupiter, as I see it, is more high-mindedness relative to human structures. So we're talking about religion, philosophy, things along those lines. And I'm not saying that Piscean folks are not philosophical or whatever, but again, the Jupiter as expressed through Pisces versus Sagittarius is different in terms of where the energy is flowing toward. So, ruled by Jupiter. Now, Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. So the first three padas, pada 1, pada 2, pada 3, all being ruled, still falling within Aquarius or Saturn. So what does Aquarius or Saturn give to this energy? It's giving the, let me go ahead and define this a little bit different. So Capricorn, the previous sign in the zodiac from Aquarius, is also ruled by Saturn. And I'm speaking in traditional Vedic astrology terms here when I'm talking about Saturn ruling Aquarius as opposed to Uranus. But Saturn in Capricorn is different than Saturn in Aquarius. What we're getting with Saturn in Capricorn, for instance, is the governance of the structures that man uses to organize oneself. So it could be financial systems, could be politics, could be social systems, all sorts of systems. And so Capricorn is more concerned with how the individual fits within that power dynamic, within those structures. What is one's status within those structures? With Aquarius, it's not about status anymore. It's about the refinement of those systems. It's the rebellion from those systems. So Aquarius is oftentimes described as energy that is kind of detached. And so this detachment is really great in some ways because it grants these people the ability, if they choose to do so, to be objective. So if you can step back objectively and look at the systems that are currently in place, you can find the flaws. So these folks are often described as a bit detached and critical because they are perceiving the social systems a bit like they're up on the roof of a house looking down at it. And they're saying that needs fixed, that this needs fixed, et cetera, et cetera. So these folks are here to communicate the knowledge that of what it is that they're perceiving in the social systems and the structures around them. So the spirit, this fire that's moving through them, is driving them towards, some ways, destroying those systems. So we got the rebellion, right? So now once it moves into that last quarter, so the fourth pada is ruled, it goes into Pisces, so we see more Jupiter energy here. So I would say this is when it makes I guess a strong shift towards service oriented as opposed to the destructive mentality where it wants to destroy the systems and rebel from the systems. Now what we get is, I would say, the energy starts to move towards what can I do to be of service. The system is what it is. I'm not connected to it. I'm not attached to it. I want to expand individuals by giving them knowledge, being of service. And so for those folks, satisfying their deeper need, Pada 4 is ruled by the moon, their internal need is very, very, very much about expanding people's awareness towards God. So you might see, astrologers, guru types, teachers, etc., having more energy closer to the fourth pada. So let's go ahead now and look at how these energies are kind of mixing and intertwining. Mars, first pada. Mars energy, how do we look at Mars energy? So here we go. We've got Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars. So Saturn is, the Aquarian energy that this first pada lies in. Jupiter is what's ruling Purva Bhadrapada, and then Mars. So the term I found was determination. What is, and we need to understand Mars here to understand why determination, why the extra oomph and drive in this placement. Mars, in a lot of ways, I like to think about, so we have all this divine energy, the sun, our programming, the solar energy that's moving through our form. How we move about the earth plane, movement is the term here. This is not conscious necessarily. I don't think of Mars as being conscious energy at all. Mars is like the energy that animates existence, that animates the physical form. It gives us movement. So you can think about a baby. When a baby is first born, it's moving. It's not conscious movement. That's Mars being expressed. That is just energy. It's just energy expressed through movement. And that's the best way to look at Mars. It has to do with impulsive, instinctual drive. And another way to look at Mars would be the heat that is like lava or magma that is boiling up through the earth and then pours out onto the earth plane. So it is the heat, the fire, the energy that propels us along the earth plane. So again, we have rebellion from structures, from social systems, passionate flow, and then high-mindedness, which is Jupiter. So you can see how all those energies kind of mix. So these individuals in the first pada, very rebellious, a lot of determined energy. And again, they have a high-minded goal that's they want to see humanity themselves, but humanity specifically moving towards spiritualization principles, moving towards refinement of the social systems and structures. Pada 2, We got Venus. I had a little difficulty thinking about this. So we have Saturn, again, Saturn, which is Aquarius, mixing with Jupiter, the rulership, then mixing with Venus. So we might get a little hedonism here, a little more sort of, and like I said, one of the terms that I kept seeing was sexual perversion that's associated with this nakshatra. And the term I saw online was gratification. So again, the idea here is this has to do with, is the individual meditating? Is the individual doing yoga? Is the individual taking care of, I guess, their consciousness? Are they present? Because if they're present, they're making better choices. So the tendency towards, this sexual perversion or whatever the association is less likely if they're operating consciously. So I don't really consider this whole placement to be all that materialistic. To me, it's not. But having this Venus here and all these fast-moving planets implies very, very fast transformation process. But it also implies, again, in the Pada too, that there is a sensory gratification that these folks are moving towards. So we're also seeing in Pada 2 a greater degree of receptivity. So these folks will still be taken care of in life. They're still going to be successful in life. So all this tension will drive them towards obtaining some degree of material prosperity because of this Venus energy that's playing out in the chart. Pada 3 is ruled by Mercury. I put on the bottom there, communication. Yeah, I would say that the gift that I almost see universally expressed online when I did research for this is that these folks are talkers. They're communicators. Their gift to humanity is to, again, in a discerning way, which is Mercury, in a discerning way, to express their knowledge, what they perceive objectively, out into the world. So that is their service. And so you get, once again, you get this very, very, very much epitomized in a very intelligent way in the third Pada. Finally, the fourth Pada is ruled by the moon. Moon represents one's internal needs. Now, moon energy mixing with Jupiter, and again, the fourth Pada is, once again, that's in Pisces, so we're talking about Jupiter rulership. So we have tremendous expansive energy, then one's emotional needs. But again, this expansive energy is different. It's not the expansive energy of philosophy and politics and those sorts of human systems. This is the expansive energy of driving one towards spiritualization, to connecting to source. So you might, in the fourth Pada, you get the guru energy here. So folks who are interested in astrology, maybe preacher types, preacher type is really the best way to kind of say that. So people that want to teach spiritual principles because that's how they're nourishing moon humanity. I think that's all I want to say about this nakshatra. Hopefully you kind of get a good feel for what's going on here. And I don't know if I explained this. I can't remember if I repeat myself all the time. But one other thing is that, going back to these gunas, when you have sattvic energy and rajasic energy, and this is how you can determine the rulership of a nakshatra. But in this particular case, it's ruled by Jupiter because sattvic energy and rajasic energy, when they combine, that's basically how Jupiter spiritualizes. And it's the idea of expansion. So it's this deep flow through of energy that's expanding or moving outward infinitely. So with all that said, hopefully you have enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching.